Hi, fourth grade. This is Miss Shields. This is our last lesson for the kings of Israel and Judah. So your test will be coming up. Make sure you hold on to your notes. But we're going to go ahead and finish up chapter 14 today. All right, so basically, we've seen this problem already. Judah had some kings that were good and some kings that weren't. Their biggest issue, of course, was worshiping false gods. The kings of Israel, there wasn't one king that was good. And over again, God sent prophets, Isaiah, Hosea, Joel, Amos, so many of these prophets, Elijah and Elisha, to the people to tell them, turn back, stop sinning, don't do wrong. Or God is going to not take care of you. He's not going to bless you. He's going to withhold his protection. And it seemed like nobody really was listening to the prophets. Now, right at this point in world history, the biggest empire there was the Assyrian Empire. It was huge and very powerful, and it had taken over a lot of the country around it. And at this point, they are looking to Israel and Judah as a place to attack next. And they've been sort of getting kind of close as they went along. Again, the prophets have been warning. So after Jehu and his four relatives, son, grandson, great-grandson, the next king that came along was the king by the name of Menahem. We talked about them just a little bit. Menahem had killed off King Shalom, and he became the king of Israel. And the Assyrians came in to attack, and Menahem said, you know what, let me just pay you. What's it going to cost for you guys not to attack us? So Menahem paid off the Assyrians. Well, then Menahem was killed by Pekahiah, and he became the king. And then Pekahiah's son, Pekah, became king. And the Assyrians came back in and they attacked again. The capital city is Samaria. They went and attacked this area first. They did not attack the capital city. And they burned the cities and they captured some people and they took them away back to Assyria. So at this point, Pekah is the king, and he's getting very, very nervous. And not long after this, a guy by the name of Hoshea kills off Pekah, and he becomes the king, and he decides he's going to do the same thing that the other king had done, pay him off. What's it going to take for you all not to attack us? And so the Assyrians said, you pay us and we won't attack. So King Hoshea pays them off and they don't attack. And then after a little bit, Hoshea decides, nah, I don't feel like paying these guys anymore. And the Assyrians came in, and this time they went right for the capital city of Samaria. And they burned the city and captured the people and took them all off to Assyria. Again, all of this, God had promised that he would not protect the people of Israel if they continued to worship the false gods. He would let the Assyrians come in and take them captive, and that's exactly what happened. Now, the Assyrians had a kind of interesting way of dealing with their captives. They figured if people groups sort of stayed separated, then they couldn't rise up and rebel. So he took the people from all these other places and sort of scattered them around. They took the people of Israel and brought them over here. He took the people of Babylon and Elam and Syria and put them in Israel, so that therefore they really wouldn't be enough groups together to rise up against him. And so he wound up mixing a lot of the groups together. And Israel, basically, from this point forward, was destroyed, just like God said. Meanwhile, back in Judah, the king of Assyria has not forgotten about Judah. It's just a little bit over the border, and Hezekiah is the king of Judah. Hezekiah did the same thing a lot of the kings did. Hey, whatever it costs, I will pay the king of Assyria not to attack us. So that went on for a little while, but then pretty soon the king of Assyria had some other demands. So he went down to Jerusalem, and actually he didn't. He sent one of his commanders down there to Jerusalem to threaten King Hezekiah and the people. And Hezekiah didn't know what to do. I mean, he's giving all he can. He doesn't quite know what to do. So Hezekiah goes to the Lord in prayer and begs God, what should I do? I don't know what to do. I've tried my best. They're obviously bigger than we are. They've already captured Israel and taken them off, and now they're after us. But the prophet Isaiah came to Hezekiah and said, don't worry about it. God will fight for us. You have been faithful to God. God will be faithful to you. He will not let the Assyrians take the city captive. So, okay, in fact, Isaiah said, this guy's not even going to see inside the walls. So Hezekiah trusted what God said. And this is sort of interesting. That night, the death angel, remember that guy from Egypt? The death angel came through the Assyrian camp and killed all the people, all the soldiers who were surrounding Israel. They did not even see the inside of the city. And those that survived went back to Assyria. God had rescued Jerusalem from that mighty army of Assyria. It was amazing. Not too long after that, King Hezekiah got sick. And Isaiah the prophet again came to Hezekiah and said, Hezekiah, get your house in order, because God is not going to heal you from this sickness. It is time for you to die and go on to heaven. Hezekiah became so upset, and he became so unhappy, and he began to pray to God, please, please let me live longer. And he began to weep and cry. And Isaiah came back to him and said, the Lord has heard your prayer, Hezekiah. He will extend your life another 15 years. Hezekiah said, I want a sign. What sign is there that God is going to keep this promise, that he's going to let me live a little bit longer? Now, in those days, of course, they told time by using a sundial. And so Isaiah said, okay, King Hezekiah, you can pick your own sign. Do you want the time to go ahead 10 spaces? Do you want it to go ahead 10 hours? Or do you want it to go backwards 10 hours? So the shadow on the sundial. And Hezekiah said, well, I don't know. I'm not sure going ahead 10 hours is going to be that exciting. I want it to go backwards. If God is really going to save my life for 15 more years, make the shadow on the time on the sundial go back 10 spaces. So that's exactly what it did. Right there, Hezekiah saw it, that God caused the time to go back 10 hours. And Hezekiah was granted another 10 years to live. And that would have been a wonderful ending to his life if he had served the Lord for the 15 years. We don't know. We do know that he lived long enough to make one humongous mistake, because the Assyrians were a powerful group, but there was another group that was getting powerful too. And that was the group from Babylon, part of Assyria nearby. But one day Hezekiah was there in his palace, and some visitors came from Babylon, and they said, "Oh, dear King Hezekiah, we heard that you were sick, and we wanted to talk to you and encourage you and everything else. So we just came to see you." And Hezekiah was so pleased that that the kings had these visitors from Babylon, these important men, had come to see him. And so Hezekiah invites them into the palace, and he gives a big feast. And then Hezekiah gets a little bit prideful, and he begins to show them around the palace. And he showed him all his treasures, and he showed him all his wealth, and all of the city, and all of the things he owned. And he's thinking, boy, these guys are going to be so impressed with what a great king I am. And when he was all finished, the visitors thanked Hezekiah very much and went on back home again. Not too long later, the prophet Isaiah comes back, and he says, who were those visitors that came to see you? And Hezekiah says, well, there's some visitors from Babylon. And Isaiah says, well, what did they see? Oh, they saw everything. They saw all my wealth and all my money and all the stuff that I have, and how great a king am I. And Isaiah said, that was a very prideful and foolish thing you did, Hezekiah. Those men came here to see what you had. Those Babylonians are going to come back here to Jerusalem, and they're going to steal everything. When they come and attack Jerusalem, they're going to take it all. So unfortunately, he did some other building projects and things, but instead of using their extra 15 years for something amazing and good and following God, Hezekiah had a moment of pride that's going to cost Israel, Judah in the end. All right, guys, that is it for the kings of Israel and Judah. Make sure you hold on to those notes. Your test is coming up on Friday, so make sure that you have your notes ready to go. You are allowed to use your notes for the test. That's it, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.